Welcome to the Vikings Now. I am your host, Patrick Siepman. Unfortunately, I have some tough news for us. We have some tough injury news regarding standout tackle Brian O'Neill, who has partially torn his Achilles, and I'll be getting into kind of the ramifications of that and what the Vikings have done and certain roster moves that they have made to try to, make this situation better and make it more manageable. But we'll be getting into that in just a second here. Tough news for the Minnesota Vikings. Had to get on here, do a little at-home video for you guys before I went into the office today, just because this is pretty important news, and this really affects how the Vikings, I think, will do in the playoffs and kind of the moves they will make. And they made a lot of roster moves. There's a lot of new names being added to this active roster following Schlottmann and the Brian O'Neill injury. But if you guys haven't already, I will ask you guys to hit that subscribe button. It's a great way to help me out. And honestly, if you guys want more videos, kind of staying up to date on everything Minnesota Vikings, because, hey, we're in the home stretch right now, guys. This is it. This is the playoff push. We are 12-4 with the Bears next week. We'll most likely get to 13-4. This is it. The playoffs are just a week away, where we will most likely be playing the New York Giants in the wild card round weekend of the NFL playoffs. So hit that subscribe button. It's a great way to help me out. Show my bosses you guys want more Vikings videos. And hey, we're closing in on 10,000 subscribers. I mean, that is a milestone just growing up as a kid I always wanted to hit. So if you guys haven't, I will ask you, hit that subscribe button. It's right down there. It's free. And you guys will stay up to date on all Vikings news and rumors. So the big news, let's just talk about it right off the jump. Standout tackle Brian O'Neill, this is coming from Pelissero. He was placed on injured reserve yesterday. He suffered a partially torn Achilles last week in the game versus the Green Bay Packers, and he's out for the 2022 regular season and the rest of the playoffs. This is a huge blow. Right now, what Kevin O'Connell said in his press conference literally a couple minutes ago, that they're going to move forward with Oli Udoh as the starting right tackle. And, if you're looking at the Vikings offensive line, at the beginning of the year and midway through the year, I was very impressed with this offensive line group, kind of what they've been through and how they were able to play as that starting five of Darrisaw, Cleveland, Bradbury, Ingram, and now Brian O'Neill. But then with Bradbury going down with the back and Brian O'Neill going down with this partially torn Achilles, and then even after the Bradbury back, Austin Schlottmann, yesterday he was placed on IR. So now we may have a situation where Chris Reed could be the starting center in the first ever playoff game, or for the first playoff game under the Kevin O'Connell era. But if you're really looking at from center, right guard, right tackle, the Vikings, this is a big problem, and I hate being negative after injury news, because I always feel like if you're a good team, you can overcome it. But losing your standout right tackle, Brian O'Neill, there's really no way to sugarcoat this. This is a hit, and it's going to take a very intelligent offensive game plan for Kevin O'Connell to work around this. But the thing with this Vikings team, with the amount of talent they have on the outside and the amount of talent they have in their left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, you're going to have to get creative. It's going to have to be a lot of chipping on the right side. In the playoffs, if it's a third and long, expect to have a tight end or running back on the right side with helping out Oli Udoh. Because if you remember that Green Bay game, Chris Reed stepped in at center. He got dominated. Oli Udoh did okay, but he still got dominated. And if you guys remember last year, when Udoh was playing the guard position for the Minnesota Vikings, he was a holding call waiting to happen every single play. So obviously, I think this is a huge loss for the Vikings. It doesn't take a breaking analysis to say that. It is a huge loss for this Vikings group and for any team to lose their standout tackle heading into the postseason. This is tough. And the Vikings, they also made more roster moves, which we will get into on the second half of today's video. But this will be the pinned comment on today's video. I want to know, how concerned are you guys? Scale it 1 through 10. Just a pretty straight up question. How concerned are you with these Minnesota Vikings injuries piling up, especially to this offensive line? 1 through 10, how concerned are you? I am floating around a 9 right now, and I don't want to overreact, and I don't want to get negative. I'm a very positive person with this Vikings group, but this is huge. This is a huge loss for this Vikings offensive line. Losing Schlottmann, obviously Schlottmann wasn't even too good this year, but he's still your backup center. I'm still optimistic that Bradbury will be able to come back from this back injury. But guys, you got to remember, offensive linemen and backs, it's a delicate situation. I couldn't even imagine. I woke up with kind of a bad back today. I couldn't even imagine getting down in a 3-point stance, trying to go against these elite NFL defensive tackles. So these injuries suck. It's gonna be interesting to see how the Vikings overcome it, but they also made some more roster moves. But get down in the comments, let me know. Scale it 1 to 10. I'm really trying to gauge the fan base on this one. Some more roster moves the Vikings made to kind of, try to make this better. They actually made one move on the defensive side of the football. They designated defensive lineman Jonathan Bullard to return from IR, and he will return to practice this week, most likely today on Wednesday when you guys are seeing this video. Bullard, good depth piece. I mean, obviously he won't play over guys like Tomlinson or Harrison Phillips, but Bullard, he was pretty solid when he stepped in earlier this year. Maybe this will kind of improve this Vikings run defense, which is still pretty suspect, but they have those big boys back, get them in and out of the lineup, get a lot more reps, and it's always good to get a guy back from IR. But 2 new names that joined the Minnesota Vikings. One joined the Minnesota Vikings active roster, who I think could be the center over Chris Reed, and that's Greg Mancz. M-A-C-Z. Greg Mancz. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. He is a center. He was undrafted out of Toledo, and he's bounced around the NFL. He obviously doesn't have too good of numbers, but he was signed to the active roster. And most likely, that will be the quarterback Kirk Cousins is taking snaps from, I think, or that'll be the center Kirk Cousins is taking snaps from in the Vikings home playoff game against the New York Giants. And then they also signed Bobby Evans. He was a tackle with the Rams. They signed him to the practice squad. It's going to be interesting to see if he will make the active roster. I'm very interested to see if the Vikings will actually make a move for a guy like Darrell Williams. I mean, Darrell Williams is a guy who's been a free agent this whole season. No teams really pulled the trigger on him. Obviously, he probably has some injury concerns, or maybe he lost a step. But he can't be worse than Ole Uda. And all I'm saying, I love Ed Ingram. I think he's shown some battle this year, and I think he's shown some improvement consistently over the year. But Ed Ingram, he still struggles. He's still a rookie. He's still figuring this out. And then if you pair him next to Ole Uda, especially with the pass rushers in the NFC playoffs, even the Giants. I mean, the Giants team bringing in Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, Azeez Ojulari, they are going to be able to win the battle up front unless the Vikings have a game plan to kind of combat that, to combat these issues of not having Brian O'Neill or Bradbury and Schlottmann. I mean, it's going to be very interesting. I mean, Dexter Lawrence, he's a dog. I mean, Dexter Lawrence is one of the best interior defensive linemen in this league, and he is probably looking to have a game-wrecking, a playoff-winning type of game versus this Vikings offensive line. I'm extremely concerned about these injuries. It's going to be interesting because the pass rushers in the NFC, they're elite. I mean, you obviously got the 49ers and what they do, and I could even imagine this Vikings offensive line going against that defensive line group. Even the Eagles. I mean, we know how they get after the quarterback. Hargrave, Sue now, big hungry. Linval Joseph is over there in Philadelphia. They got to feel like 7 guys that could start on other NFL teams. So these injuries for the Vikings, they're piling up at a very tough time. So it sucks, but we're going to have to move through this, and we're going to stay positive. But Brian O'Neill out for the year with a partially torn Achilles. He's going to be out for the remainder of the 2022 season. And technically the only game he can come back is going to be the Super Bowl. So you never know. If the Vikings go on a run, make the Super Bowl, we could have Brian O'Neill back for that game. But it's going to be most likely Ole Uda running the right tackle spot for the Minnesota Vikings, our 6th-round pick out of Elon, who I was huge on going into last year, him playing guard. I mean, I'd be lying to you guys if I say I wasn't extremely nervous now about this Vikings group losing wild card weekend. I think this offense, I mean, the defense is going to need to step up. It's just going to take a big collective group effort to overcome these injuries. But we'll see. Who knows? Maybe this Greg Mancz guy can step in at center and be a life changer for that offensive line. Who knows? Maybe Ole Uda, maybe he'll step up. Maybe he'll have a really good postseason. Maybe earn himself some money heading into next offseason. But thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Again, if you guys made it all the way to the end of the video, I please ask you to consider subscribing. It's free. Trying to close in on 10,000 subs on the channel. I mean, I couldn't even imagine hitting that. But we'll see. Hit that sub button if you guys haven't already. Thank you guys so much for watching. Skol Vikes. Vikings, Brian O'Neill, out for the year. Skol Vikes.